Something replaced the pound sterling, something replaced the French franc, something replaced the Spanish peso. Something will replace the US dollar. If there's a crisis soon, the world will be forced to do something. So it might try gold and silver.
Please join us for our next live stream, Sunday, May 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over current events, past guests, and of course, gold and silver news. Once again, our next live stream will be Sunday, May 30th, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. As always, if you are new to our channel or if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of new updates, and give us a thumbs up. If you like what we do, we truly do appreciate your support. Jim Rogers, best-selling author of books like Hot Commodities, The Adventure Capitalist, Investment Biker, and Street Smarts, as well as an investor extraordinaire, is back once again. A graduate of both Oxford and Yale, Jim expertly understands the economy and the markets and has graciously offered his time to chat with us here. It's time to saddle up and silver up for Jim Rogers. Jim, welcome back to SBTV. How are you doing?
I am delighted to be here, Patrick. It's nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you also. Jim, I want to start with recent news coming from U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She's calling for business leaders to pay higher taxes to support the Biden infrastructure plan. Now, if businesses in the U.S. are, let's say, overtaxed, overregulated, what do you see their options as being?
Well, as you know, the U.S. is no longer as competitive as it used to be in the world markets. I'm not the only one who knows that, and many companies have moved away, put factories in other places. They're forcing them out. There'll be more of the same. I mean, if you're trying to compete on the world market and you have to pay higher taxes and everybody else has to pay higher taxes, it's impossible to compete. So you have to manufacture somewhere else. It's not good for America. But Mrs. Yellen and Mr. Biden, their whole lives, have loved taxing and borrowing and spending money.
Aside from this, we're also seeing businesses looking for workers. A record 8.1 million job openings in America are available, yet no workers are in sight. Jim, despite the numbers of people being vaccinated growing each day, why isn't America going back to work?
From what I read, the unemployment benefits are so high that many people can make more or as much just staying home and letting the government send them checks. I don't know. I don't know the facts, but I've read several articles to that effect. And if that's the case, that's the problem. I mean, there are many people in the world who say, I'd rather sit home and watch the sports or watch the drama than work. They're sending me money. If that's the case, Patrick, of course, America's shooting itself in the foot.
Jim, the money printing, the stimulus, as we just kind of touch on, the decade of low interest rates, we're seeing more and more talk of inflation, and we are seeing that talk in prices. Lumber prices up, homes, food, fuel. Can the Fed keep on this course of loose monetary policy, or will we start to see tightening perhaps sooner than later?
Well, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury both say, don't worry, we have this under control. If there's inflation, it's transitory, etc. Now, I know from history that either they don't know what they're talking about or they're lying, because throughout history, when you have staggering amounts of money printed and borrowed and spent, it's nearly always led to inflation. And we do see inflation rising now. I would suspect we're going to have more inflation despite what these guys say. I have certainly learned I've been investing a long time and have been reading a long time. I've learned that most of the time these guys either don't know what they're talking about or lie. I suspect it's both this time as well. They're just not being honest with all of us, or not being honest with themselves.
Do you think if that inflation really starts to rise, maybe even get out of control a bit, do you think the Fed will have the courage to raise interest rates?
No, certainly not, because these guys are more interested in keeping their jobs than anything else, Patrick. They don't care about your job or my children. They care about their jobs, and they know that raising interest rates will not be popular. So they'll do everything they can including printing more money or buying more bonds to keep interest rates down. Now, eventually, the market says, we don't care. We've seen this movie before. We're going to get out. And they do. And then it gets out of control and interest rates go higher, inflation goes higher, it all feeds on itself. And then you have really, really, really bad times. Because if the market takes over from the central banks and the market has more money and more brains than the central banks, then we're all in serious trouble.
It seems that the keeper of the US dollar, the Federal Reserve, maybe even the US government, are the very ones giving reason for the rest of the world to get out of the US dollar, the world's reserve currency. Is the US dollar on the path to being removed as the world's reserve currency?
We've had many central currencies or international currencies in history. None of them have lasted more than 100, 150 years in history. US dollar's been around for several decades. So maybe it clearly is coming to an end. The fundamentals are there. America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Many countries are starting to look for something to compete with the US dollar. You know, the way an international currency is supposed to work, it's supposed to be neutral. But if Washington gets angry at you, they put sanctions on you and cut you off and say you cannot use the US dollar. Well, that's not what an international medium of exchange is supposed to be. So many countries, for political reasons, are looking for something to compete with the dollar. And for economic reasons, the US is the largest debtor nation in world history. It's getting worse every day. I'm not the only person who knows that's a potential fundamental problem. So, unfortunately, I'm an American, and I don't like saying it, but unfortunately, the world is now looking away from the US dollar for political and economic reasons. It's not going yet, but we're starting the process.
The current Fed policies, government policies, do you think that perhaps they've accelerated this US dollar retreat from reserve currency?
No, of course. When you print staggering amounts of money and borrow staggering amounts of money, I'm not the only one who knows that America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Everybody can see what's going on, and some people start to act.
Jim, that brings a question here that I'd like to ask you. Is it possible then for a nation on the rise, such as China, to have the largest population, largest economy, perhaps the greatest influence over much of the world, and yet not have its own currency or at least be a part of a currency that is the world's reserve currency?
Well, the Chinese currency has been opening up in the last 15 years or so, but it's still not a convertible currency. You can't buy and sell. You can't just pick up the phone or go on the computer and buy and sell renminbi. So it's impossible to be the world's reserve currency or a medium of exchange if you're not freely tradable. China is moving in that direction and has been moving in that direction for a few years. But until they're freely convertible, and even then, it will take people a while to understand it. It's not there yet. It's the main currency I see on the horizon, which can compete with the dollar, but it's certainly not there yet.
The next reserve currency, do you think it may perhaps be the yuan, Chinese yuan, or perhaps a basket of currencies?
The Chinese currency is the only one I see on the horizon that could do it. Certainly cannot be the Japanese yen or the English currency or even the euro. I don't see any other currency at the moment. Now, it cannot do it either right now. As I said, it's a blocked currency. It's not even tradable, completely freely tradable. So it can't work either, at least not the way things are now.
I want to get back to the U.S. here. Is the U.S. as a capitalist country dying? And what type of government do you think it will become if you do see it as being the capitalism is dying?
Well, there's no question that the U.S. is becoming more and more collectivist, whichever word you want to use to describe it. I mean, California is more socialist than China is now, even though China calls itself communist and California calls itself capitalist. It is happening in many Western countries. They're becoming more and more collectivist, if you will. And it looks as though that's going to continue. Everybody wants a free lunch. Now there's something called MMT, which is more money today. I don't know, what do they call it? Modern monetary theory. I call it more money today. It's easy money. Everybody loves an easy answer. And so people are looking more and more for easy answers, certainly in the West. China, for whatever reason, is going less in that direction. China's not bailing people out. China's letting people go bankrupt. So China, for whatever reason, is less in that direction than many Western countries. And China has said, if you get in trouble, we're not going to bail you out. Well, in the West, they bail you out if you get in trouble. Not good, but they do it.
Okay, and we hear all this talk about central bank digital currencies, and ultimately it looks like we will be cashless at some point and be using this central bank digital currency. What are your thoughts regarding a cashless world and having to use a central bank digital currency?
Well, it's already happening. In China, you cannot take a taxi with money. You cannot buy an ice cream with Chinese money because nobody has any money. It's all on their phone. You have to have computer money already, and it's getting more and more that way. Every country in the world is working on computer money, including the U.S. And eventually, yes, all our money is going to be on the computer. Governments love that. They don't have to print it. They don't have to transport it. They don't have to, protect it. And they love it. More important, Patrick, they can then know everything you do. They'll call you one day and say, you're drinking too much coffee this month. Cut down on the coffee. They love the control it will give them. I don't like it. I mean, I hope most of us don't like it. But unfortunately, that's the way things are going. And we will all have computer money eventually.
Yeah, you've hit it on the head. That seems to be the concern of a lot of people, where a cashless world will seem to, or actually will take away some freedoms, some liberties, and you have a concern with that as well.
So I don't want the government knowing everything I'm doing. I'm not doing anything that's a problem, but whatever I'm doing, as I said, they'll call you up and say you're drinking too much coffee. What business is it of theirs what I'm doing? They love to know what everybody's doing. Most of us don't particularly want other people snooping into whatever we're doing, even if we're doing simple things like reading magazines. Who cares? It's none of their business.
So, Jim, no matter how we paint the short future ahead, we're going to have both chaos and opportunities as well. And we're going to need stores of value to maintain and protect the value of our currency. What things would you label as a store of value, especially in case of a US dollar demise, since much of the world holds US dollars?
Something will replace the US dollar. Something has always, something replaced the pound sterling, something replaced the French franc, something replaced the Spanish peseta, et cetera, et cetera. So something, the world will find something. It's better if the world finds it rather than if some government tries to dictate it. The only possibility I see at the moment is the Chinese renminbi, but as I said, that's not practical now either. I don't see a replacement at the moment. If there's a crisis soon, the world will be forced to do something. So it might try gold and silver. Many times in history, people have used gold and silver more than gold throughout history. But I mean, I've got my silver, I've got my gold. All of us peasants know that when something goes wrong, we want some silver over there in the closet, we want some gold under the bed. Politicians and bureaucrats say, forget it, forget. Well, they can say that all they want, but us peasants, we've been around a long time, hundreds of thousands of years, that we know we better have some gold or some silver when things go wrong.
How about gold and silver? Do you see them coming back and having some sort of a role in global finance?
Well, I doubt it unless something happens very quickly and very suddenly. I mean, I don't think the U.S. dollar is going to blow up today or this year even. It's going in that direction. It could if we have a gigantic collapse in 3 months or a few months. Yes, of course, people may grab for gold or silver in desperation. I doubt it. The problem with the gold standard or the silver, it works, and politicians don't like it. It requires discipline and and knowledge. Well, politicians don't want discipline. I don't want somebody making them not spend too much money. Uh, the gold standard has certainly been good at times. It's had its own failures. It's never lasted because politicians have always found a way to cheat and to trick people with the gold standard and the silver standard. But I don't think it'll come back unless, as I say, we're very desperate quickly.
With all these things we've talked about so far, the stimulus, money printing, and so on, do you expect the gold price and the silver price to see new record highs as long as the Fed continues to do what it's doing, printing money and monetize debt?
Yes, eventually I expect gold and silver to go back to new highs. Uh, I mean, throughout history, when there's staggering amounts of money printing and debasing of money, government money, people have always fled to gold and silver. And I'm sure they will again in 2025, 2030, whenever the next disaster takes place.
Okay, and we do see a lot of people in cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin. I just want to know your thoughts about Bitcoin if you consider it a store of value.
I have never bought nor sold a cryptocurrency. There have been hundreds, many of them have disappeared, as you know, and gone to zero. We don't read too much about them, but there are a few thousand of them now, apparently. Um, I mean, sure, if people want to trade them. I don't see any reason not to, as trading vehicles, and some people have made a lot of money. I don't quite understand why, because if I trade cotton, I know that eventually I'm going to have a shirt. If I trade Microsoft, I know I've got a company behind those shares. If I trade cryptocurrency, I'm not sure what I have that, other than a trading item. But if people want to trade, that's fine. My view is that if they do become currencies, and the crypto people all say, oh, we're going to be the new currency, we're going to replace government money. If that ever starts happening, I'm sure that the governments will then say no. They will outlaw it or ban it or tax it. They'll do something because governments do not like to lose their control. They do not like to lose their power. I can't imagine that if the US ever said, okay, now this is money. This is the US dollar. And if you want to spend money, this is how you do it. And I can't imagine the US government would then say, but if you want to use something else, use something else. That's not the way governments think. That's not the way they work. So I suspect that if they become real currencies, governments will take action.
Yeah, I know there were a whole bunch of bills put before Congress in the last year or two. So I definitely agree with you there. They are looking to start regulating it. But Jim, moving over to a green new world, governments are looking to go green with renewable energy. What commodities do you see getting a boost for renewable energies?
Well, it's already happening. Copper has made all-time highs because everyone now expects electric vehicles. But electric vehicles use several times as much copper as a normal vehicle because copper is used for electricity conduction. Uh, silver, silver is very useful in electronics and in solar electricity. So silver will certainly have much more demand if we go that way, and it looks like we are. So some of the things that the world needs or thinks we think we need solar energy, we think we need electric cars. If we're going to have them, it's going to increase the demand for some things, copper, lithium, silver, a few things like that.
Do you think the world is ready to move off of their current ICE or internal combustion engines where we use gas and petrol, diesel, oil based fuels? Do you think we're ready to move off of it and go into electric vehicles?
Well, it will take a while, first of all. I mean, even if we all said tomorrow we want it, we couldn't do it because where are we going to get the electricity for our cars? Where are we going to be? How are we going to do it? And there are millions of petrol vehicles on the road. So we couldn't do it tomorrow if we want to. I can't imagine anybody would say, oh, it's going to happen in a year or two or five even. So it will take a gradual process. You may know that at the beginning of the 20th century, there were many electric cars. In fact, Henry Ford's wife had an electric car and she didn't like his petrol cars. she loved her electric car. Well, I mean, there were electric cars, but eventually petrol cars took over and electric cars disappeared. Now they're coming back. It looks like it's going the other way, but it will take a while. I wouldn't be selling my oil anytime soon because of electric cars.
Jim, have you had a chance to ride in the electric cars? We see so many of them here in Singapore.
I have ridden in one, not recently, it was a few years ago, but I mean, it was great, very quiet, very smooth. But I'm not rushing out to buy one. I might, but at the moment, no.
As the numbers for these electric vehicle rise, we're going to see more and more nickel being used. Nickel is a big part of the electric vehicle battery, and it is in much higher demand. Have you been keeping an eye on nickel lately?
Well, I keep an eye on nearly all commodities. I have some commodity ETFs, and so yes, I'm a little aware of what's going on. I mean, I have there's something Rogers Metals ETF trades on the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, it's making new highs because things like nickel and copper and lead, they're all in great demand.
Okay, and as mentioned, there will be opportunities ahead. In what sectors of the markets or the economy do you see opportunities, and perhaps even in what countries do you see opportunities as well?
Well, bonds are certainly a bubble all over the world. Bonds are the highest price they've been in the history of the world. So I don't see opportunities in bonds. Um, Property in some places, I mean, if you go to Seoul or New Zealand, some places property is a bubble. Not everywhere. In many places it's not, but they're beginning. If you look at stocks, you're starting to see bubbles develop. Amazon goes up every day. Tencent goes up all the time. Samsung is always going up. So bubbles are developing in stocks, but not in all stocks yet. The cheapest asset class I see are commodities. Silver is down 50% from its all-time high. Oil is down 50% from its all-time high. Sugar's down 70% from its all-time. So the cheapest asset class I know are commodities. Doesn't mean you should rush out and buy them. It doesn't mean anything. But as I look around for asset classes, the cheapest are commodities. And as far as countries are concerned, I mean, the Japanese stock market is still down 35% from its all-time high, 35 or 40. China's down, Russia's down. The US is making all-time highs, but I usually prefer to buy stock markets that are not making new highs, that are depressed, such as Japan or China or Russia.
Okay. Jim, I remember when we spoke in the safe house or a gold and silver vault here in Singapore a couple years back, I had asked you that same question. What were some of the things you were looking to buy? And at that time, you said sugar. And I think before we even turned out the lights to go home after that interview, sugar went up. That quick, you were that spot on. So Jim Rogers, before we wrap up, could you let our listeners know more about Beeland Interest and the Ricci?
Well, it's one of my, I have to have a company to where my assets and to do business. Nobody can buy shares or anything. It's just my own private way to do business. I do have some books I've published, not in English recently. No, I don't have anything to sell, Patrick.
Okay, you sure know. I'll trade you some copper for some shares if you have any available.
I prefer sugar right now, or silver or gold. Copper's making new highs. Silver's still down 50%. I plan to buy more silver. I plan to buy more gold before this is over, but I'm not buying either right now. Problem is my market timing is usually not very good, but I will be buying more silver and more gold sometime in the future.
All right, Jim Rogers, once again, we thank you for coming on SBTV. We wish you all the best ahead, and I hope we can do this again soon.
My pleasure, Patrick. Anytime you want.
That was Jim Rogers, global investor and author. For more information about his work and his views on the economy, you can find his books. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the SBTV channel to be updated on new content. And do also check out the SBTV podcast on iTunes and Spotify.